Sixers fans, how we feeling out there? Hey y'all, my name is Lauren Gordon. Some of you may already know me on social media as Lauren Fan of the Year. Others may have just stumbled upon this podcast, but either way, I want to first thank all of you for tuning in to episode 13 of my very first podcast. I'm just a Sixers fan, the Lauren Fan of the Year story. Now let's continue the story. Y'all, we finished the 2016-2017 regular season 28-54, another losing record. And during the NBA draft lottery, the Boston Celtics would get the number one pick, but would trade it to us for our third pick. Now, y'all, it didn't make sense then, and it doesn't make sense to me now why Boston would trade their number one to us, of all teams, especially when you consider we are in the same division. It was sus, but then again, I'm always suspicious of the Celtics, and especially their GM at the time, Danny Ainge. Didn't like him as a Celtics player or as a coach of the Phoenix Suns, and I definitely did not like him as the Boston Celtics GM. You can't trust the Boston Celtics. It's like making a deal with the devil. And I knew the Celtics wasn't just giving us their number one pick just to be nice. Whatever their intent was behind swapping their number one with our number three selection, I knew they would still benefit and come out on top. I briefly mentioned in episode 12 the Colangelos, and that I had met the father, Jerry Colangelo, who was hired by the Sixers organization back in 2015 as special advisor to the managing general partner and chairman of basketball operations. After Sam Hinkie stepped down, Jerry's son Brian was hired as the Sixers general manager and president of basketball operations. Now, y'all, in my opinion, Sam Hinkie was squeezed out of the league for being fully transparent on his plan to tank and rebuild. A lot of fans, including myself, brought into the process because I was tired of us just being mediocre. We were good enough to make the playoffs, but not good enough to really go on a deep run to win a championship. So what Hinkie was doing, it wasn't illegal. He basically exploited a loophole to build a better team through the lottery with draft picks. So I'm aware there were a lot of fans who were not on board with intentionally tanking, and it was definitely not a good look for the NBA. I mean, you can't have teams intentionally losing, even though there were teams over the NBA history who did improve through the draft. But no team had a GM like Sam Hinkie who spelled it out and basically told us to trust the process. Y'all, I mentioned in the last episode how I began noticing the increase of fans at the Wells Fargo Center, especially after we drafted Ben Simmons. And on June 20th, 2017, I made a Facebook post that read, "My days of having the whole row to myself are over." Y'all, it was being reported that there were record number season ticket sales. With more and more fans returning to the Wells Fargo Center, y'all, this was great because it meant that there was more excitement surrounding our Philadelphia 76ers. I made that post on June 20th, and on June 22nd, just 2 days later, I went to the 97.5 FM Fanatic Draft Party at Valley Forge Casino. And there I would meet in person for the very first time sports radio host Devon Givens. Y'all, I crushed on Devon because, as I mentioned before, I have a soft spot in my heart for any man who knows his Sixers stuff. And I would faithfully listen to Devon's radio show on 97.5 The Fanatic every weekday, Monday through Friday from 6 to 10. He has a great radio voice, and he knows not just Sixers, he knows the NBA, he knows basketball. And I am a huge, huge fan, even to this day, of Devon. He's a great friend of mine. But looking back, that's when I first met Devon. And we even took a photo together. So I'm sure I could pull that photo up somewhere. But anyway, it was a fun draft party because all the fans received a 97.5 Fanatic t-shirt, which I still have. Then all eyes were glued to the TV monitors as we watched NBA Commissioner Adam Silver take to the podium. And with the sound of that iconic bell chime that they always play before they make the announcement, echoing throughout the room, Adam Silver announced, with the number 1 pick, the Philadelphia 76ers select Markelle Fultz from University of Washington. Y'all, again, I was disappointed with this pick. For some reason, I wasn't excited about Markelle Fultz. So, full transparency, y'all, I don't watch a lot of college basketball, but right before the draft, I always read up and watch highlights of the players projected to go in the first round, and Fultz did nothing for me. I actually wanted Josh Jackson, who was a shooting guard, small forward, who ended up going 4th to the Phoenix Suns. Lonzo Ball went 2nd to the Lakers, and those stinking Boston Celtics took Jason Tatum with the 3rd selection. Damn. But I would have also taken De'Aaron Fox, Swiper, who was selected 5th by the Sacramento Kings, or Malik Monk, who was a shooting guard who went 11th to the Charlotte Hornets. And also in that draft class, y'all, was Donovan Mitchell, Spider, Lauri Markkanen, Bam Adebayo, and John Collins. So it was a pretty decent draft class. And like I said, for some reason, I just was not excited about Markelle Fultz. And I know some of the analysts and the talking heads were saying that Markelle Fultz would be a good fit with this team, but I just was not excited. But Markelle Fultz was now part of our Sixers team, and I always embrace a player who wears that Sixers jersey. All right, I'm looking at my timeline. On June 23rd, I posted a photo of the Feds, F-E-D-S, which was an acronym for Fultz, Embiid, Dario, and Simmons. And I was like, ooh, this is a pretty competitive starting lineup. And I started getting excited about Fultz. And then in July, we picked up J.J. Redick. And then I was like, okay, see, now, listen, this is what I'm talking about. Because I always wanted a good shooter. And I felt like J.J. Redick would be perfect on this team. So Embiid was locked in as our center. Ben was locked in as our point guard. We now have Fultz, J.J. Redick, Dario Saric. Yes, the roster was finally coming together. Let's go. So y'all, later that month in July, Fultz ended up leaving the Summer League game with an ankle injury. I wasn't overly concerned, but I couldn't help but think, damn, why are all of our number 1 picks always hurt right before the regular season? Embiid, Ben, and now Fultz. Okay, so this next part of my story isn't necessarily Sixers related, but it is Iverson related, which I guess is still kind of Sixers related. Allen Iverson, and cousin from Virginia, hooked us up with floor seats for Ice Cube's 3-on-3 basketball game that was being played at the Wells Fargo Center. It was Larry, me, and our daughters, and y'all could not tell me that we were not VIPs. We were sitting close to actor and comedian Michael Blackson, and there were retired NBA players there and a few celebrities. Allen didn't even play that night. I think he was like a coach or something, but the fans didn't care. They was just happy to see him. After the game, Larry, me, and our girls were invited to the tunnel where the locker rooms were. Now, we couldn't go into the locker room, but we were out in the hallway that led to the locker room. And we were just standing up against the wall, watching the players walk back and forth. And I snapped a quick photo of retired player Jermaine O'Neal as he walked by. And I also took a photo of Ice Cube, and I was hyped because, y'all, Ice Cube is a rap legend from NWA with Dr. Dre and the late Eazy-E. And he was also behind and or been in films like Boys in the Hood, Friday, Barbershop, Ride Along, Anaconda, The Players Club, Are We There Yet? And y'all, the list goes on and on. I even like that film Fist Fight. That just popped in my head. But and now he was the brains behind this 3-on-3 basketball league. Ice Cube is so freaking talented. So anyway, I'm standing up against the wall, and I look over at the opposite wall from us, and with his head down low, trying to be incognito, y'all, it was freaking LL Cool J. So of course, when I'm in these situations, my inner fan wants to fan out, like be like, I can't believe it's LL, and act crazy and whatnot. But being that he was trying not to be noticed, I didn't want to like bother him. I still try to have some kind of decorum as a fan. So y'all, I just snapped a quick picture of him because no one was going to believe I was literally standing across from LL Cool J and standing next to Ice Cube. So y'all, as we were heading out of the Wells Fargo Center, we ran into Ann Iverson, Allen's mom. Remember when Allen played and she used to attend all of the home games holding up her sign, "That's my boy, number 3. As a mom myself, I have mad love and respect for Ann Iverson. She raised a hell of a son on and off the court. And she would stop to chat with us for a minute, and she even took a photo with Kendall. Someone presented Allen with this huge plate with the name Iverson on it, and y'all, he handed it right over to us for us to keep. How many people can say that they got a gift from a Hall of Fame legend and my GOAT, Allen Iverson? I remember being at work when the new season schedule was released. No, I yelled. My co-workers, Eileen and Wheezy, who were actually sisters, were standing by my desk and asked what was wrong. I told them I had scheduled a work dinner meeting the night of the Sixers home opener, and it could not be rescheduled, and I most definitely needed to attend. I was so pissed, but I had no one to blame but myself. So, y'all, let me tell y'all about Eileen and Wheezy. As I mentioned, they are sisters. Now, Eileen and I not only worked together at our current company at the time, we also worked together at our previous company. So Eileen and I went way back. She knew I was a huge Sixers fan. And I remember one day she asked if I listened to 97.5 The Fanatic. I told her, of course, I listened from sun up to sundown. I told her how I listened to Mark Farzetta, The Bro, Anthony Gargano, Mikey Miss, and then from 6 to 10, I listened to Devon, my crush. She then told me that The Bro, Jamie Lynch, was her son. And my jaw almost hit the floor. And then I screamed with excitement because I was a huge fan of The Bro. So yes, I worked with Jamie Lynch's mom, Eileen, and his aunt Wheezy for years. No lie, they are hands down one of the nicest families I've ever met. And remember in an earlier episode, I told y'all that I went to high school with Anthony Gargano's wife, Tamara. I tell y'all, that 6 degrees of separation is a real thing. So as I mentioned, I listen to The Fanatic from sunup to sundown. And from time to time, I'd call in and give my 2 cents on my thoughts about the Sixers, mostly to the mid-morning show with Anthony Gargano and Andrew Salchunas, but I love the sports talk lineup. That's how I got most of my Sixers information. I would also read Sixers beat writer Keith Pompey's articles in the Philadelphia Inquirer. And just like when I was a kid, I was consumed with getting as much Sixers breaking news, information, insights, and opinions as possible. On October 23rd, the day after my sister Brittany's birthday, we got our first Sixers win. Ben Simmons had his first triple-double after 3 consecutive double-doubles. I felt like we were finally on our way up. And I remember after that game, Molly Sullivan, the team reporter at the time, doing a post-game interview, and Embiid, Covington, Fultz, and Simmons were in the background playing to the camera as she was speaking, just having fun after the win. And it was so nice and refreshing to see the chemistry between the players. So looking at my timeline, just a week later, my sister Brittany and I went to a season ticket holder event at the Sheraton Society Hill Hotel. And it was just a weird night because the event was only 90 minutes and some of the players who were supposed to be there were a no-show. And I believe the only player I recall actually seeing that night was Dario Saric. So this wasn't necessarily a bad event. I just remembered thinking it wasn't worth leaving work early, fighting through traffic, and paying for parking. On November the 3rd, which was basically the next day, Larry and I went to the game. I vaguely remember us not really speaking to each other for whatever reason, and instead of sitting right next to him, I sat in the open seat next to me so that we had a seat between us. I had just gotten settled in my seat, took a few selfies, like I told y'all I always do before each game, when my cell phone rang. I saw that it was my sister Courtney, so I answered it. At first, it was kind of hard to hear her because people were starting to fill into our section. But what I heard, but didn't make sense, and what I couldn't believe, was the news that my sister Kelly had died. I was in complete shock. I kept asking, what happened? What happened? Kelly was younger than me, and she was the mother to my teenage niece. I was frozen, but I told Courtney that I would meet up with her and the family. I hung up the phone, and Larry asked if everything was okay. Still in shock, I told him that Courtney just told me that my sister Kelly died. We quickly jumped up and was running through the Wells Fargo Center to get to the car. Security at the door told us, if you leave, you will not be allowed back in the building. And we just yelled, it's a family emergency, we have to go. So we got to the car and my brain was on overload. I couldn't even think. And thank God Larry was with me and was able to drive while I called my mom to get more details. I remember it being so difficult just to get out the parking lot. Because remember, it was still 30 minutes before tip-off. We were going against the traffic grain, and the natural traffic flow was cars coming into the lot, not necessarily going out of the lot. I just wanted to be with and be there for my family. One of the most difficult days of my life was burying my younger sister. Absolutely heart-wrenching. Until my younger sisters, Britt and Court, were born, it was just Kelly and me. She was truly my best friend growing up, and I couldn't believe she was gone. My world was beginning to crumble because during this time, not only did I lose my sister, I was also absolutely miserable in my marriage. Now, y'all, it's not one of those things where I woke up one day and I wasn't happy in the marriage. It was one of those things where each day I felt that we were growing further and further apart. And it seemed like the only thing Larry and I had in common was talking about the Sixers. Then after a while, we didn't even want to do that with each other. Looking back, you have to remember, I met Larry when I was 17 years old. I was now 47. We were married for 25 years, but we had been together for 30 years, and we were raising 4 children. It's a lot. And we were not the same people as we were when we first met and dated when we were teenagers. His direction for our life and my direction for our life were in 2 complete opposite directions. We were both miserable, and whenever we did talk, it always turned into an argument. I don't want to speak for him, but in my opinion, neither of us were happy. Why would I stay in a situation like that? Why would I want him to stay in a situation like that? And why put that on our kids? So, I was grieving my sister, I was grieving my marriage, and I worked in a dysfunctional workplace. I felt so overwhelmed. I still had 4 kids who were depending on me to be strong. Looking back, I know I was fully functioning with depression. Every day, I'd gather the strength just to get through the day with a smile on my face and made the conscious decision to basically fake it until I make it. And I always thought, this too shall pass. But what I didn't know was how long would I be in this storm. My kids are my entire world, so they are always my motivation to keep going and to be strong. And what gave me the mental break and the escape I sometimes needed, it wasn't drugs, it wasn't alcohol, it wasn't even food. It was enjoying my Sixers games. It was something I could always look forward to that gave me comfort. I remember in November, over what would have been our 25th wedding anniversary, I took a cruise just to get away and clear my head. This was just a few days after we buried my sister. One of my daughters didn't want me to go alone, so she decided to go with me and would be by my side the entire time. She allowed me to cry, vent, and we laughed a lot. And it was a much needed vacation. It's something about getting away from it all and connecting with God, with ocean water, ocean breezes, the warmth of the sun, the smiles from strangers. Lots of cocktails help too. It allowed me time to grieve my sister, clear my head, and decide if I wanted to continue with my marriage. It got to the point where we were in the same house, but we were avoiding each other. And I never wanted to get to the point where we actually despised each other. And I didn't want to continue to live in that kind of environment where I felt neither of us had anything left to give to the other. So I made the decision to separate, and I told Larry that I was planning to move out in January of 2018. And what my sister's death taught me was that life is short. Death is not exclusive to only old people. Tomorrow is not guaranteed. I wanted to be happy. I wanted him to be happy. Because when it's all said and done, everyone deserves happiness. I'm looking at my notes, and on December the 4th, J.J. Redick said, and I quote, "It's the best home crowd I've played with in my career." And y'all, I was happy to hear him say that because I knew as a season ticket holder, I was a huge part of that energy that he was referring to. And 3 days later, on December the 7th, Okafor was traded to the Nets. Then, 2 weeks later, in fact, just a couple days before Christmas, my grandmother on my dad's side passed away. And my heart would especially go out to my dad, who basically lost his daughter and his mother within a couple months. Our family was going through it. I remember crying a lot during this time, just being sad and unhappy. On December 29th, 3 days before the new year, I made a Facebook post that read, "2017 has been my most difficult year. Heartbreak and loss forced me to do a lot of soul searching on learning who I am as a person and what's really important to me. It's been a painful journey, but it is necessary for my personal growth. I'm still standing, I'm a better person, and I have my health and strength. So I'm already ahead of the game for 2018. I'm excited for the new year. Bring it on." So after my grandmother's funeral, the first week of the new year in 2018, I moved into my first apartment. It was the first time I had truly been on my own, and I was terrified. I went from growing up with a strict mother to moving in with Larry at the age of 19, getting married at 22, having 4 kids, never went away to college. I had sacrificed most of my life for my family, and this was the first time in my life I made myself the priority, and I wasn't depending on someone else for my own happiness. I knew it was an inside job, and I knew it was up to me to find my own happiness within myself, and I knew what type of life I deserved. Our kids were grown at this point, and they fully supported my decision to separate from their father. So as long as my kids were good with my decision, then I was good. And believe it or not, I still wanted Larry to be good because I will always care for him. He's the father of my 4 beautiful children, and I will be forever grateful for that. And I was still grateful for all of the wonderful memories we shared over the years. We did have some really good times, and we would still always be connected through our children. We were just no longer good for each other. So Larry stopped coming to the Sixers games. I mean, I guess it would be weird to sit next to each other while we were separated. But y'all, I didn't give a damn. Nothing was keeping me from attending the Sixers games. I paid for my seat, he paid for his seat, and being that he didn't go, our kids would just rotate on who was going to the game with me. On February the 10th, 4 days after my birthday, Corey went with me to a game, and we got upgraded to floor seats. It was like the Sixers Angels knew I just needed a pick-me-up. And what an awesome surprise. I remember thinking, had I known we would be sitting courtside, I would have dressed up. Because y'all, I was wearing a Sixers top, of course, but I was wearing these black sweatpants, and I had a big old hole in my knee. I was looking pretty bummy. I didn't know I'd be sitting courtside. I was just glad to get out the house that night. But after a while, I didn't care. Everyone should experience sitting courtside during a live NBA game. It is quite the experience. With complimentary food and drinks, it's the life. I remember sitting next to some guy courtside, and I would catch him staring at me, and I'd look at him, smile, and then go back to watching the game. And during a timeout, he whispered to me, "I know who you are." Confused and unsure of what he was going to say next, I said, "Who?" And he blurted out, "You're Markelle Fultz's mom." Y'all, do I look like Markelle Fultz's mom? Jeez. I mean, I'm sure she's a nice lady, though. On February the 13th, 3 days later, my girls and I attended a season ticket holder event at Independence Blue Cross River ice skating rink. My girls enjoyed the outdoor ice skating. I enjoyed the indoor food, drinks, music, photo ops, socializing, all that good stuff. During this event, we had the amazing opportunity to finally meet and take a photo with Ben Simmons. And as we approached him, I smiled and said, "That's my Rookie of the Year," and gave him a big hug. Ben responded with a shy but confident, "That's right," and a huge smile. Y'all, I love Ben Simmons, and I'll go into more details about my feelings about Ben in a later episode. But y'all, Ben was one of the few draft picks that I was actually excited about because I felt like he gave us the best shot to win a championship. On February 15th, just 2 days later, our Sixers erased a 24-point deficit to win our 5th straight game. And I would post on Facebook, "Last night's game was hands down the best game ever. So proud of my guys." Then on February the 16th, the next day, it was announced that Embiid made his first NBA All-Star game. It seemed like whenever I would get too happy, life would just kick me right back down again. A few days later, my mother-in-law passed away. Even though Larry and I weren't together, I still wanted to be there for him and my in-laws. I loved and grieved her too. She was also an amazing grandmother to our children. I felt like life was lifing and I could not catch my breath. And on February the 19th, I made a Facebook post that read, "In 4 months, I've lost my sister, my grandmother, and my mother-in-law. Not to mention, y'all, what I was going through in my marriage. No one knows the day nor the hour. Don't take life and each other for granted. Tell people you love them while you can." I was grieving the loss of my sister, my grandmother, my mother-in-law, and my marriage. And y'all, I'm not going to lie. It was hard emotionally. This was the most difficult time of my life. I didn't know how I would get through this. I didn't know how long I would be in this. I didn't know if there was more sadness and disappointment that was still to come. But I always try to keep a positive attitude on life. I remained faithful and I meditated and I prayed a lot. And I still had the support of my children, my mom, my dad, my 2 sisters, my bonus mom, Nina, my sister cousins, who are more like sisters to me than cousins. And we leaned heavily on each other as a family. I even had a new boss at this time who was fully supportive and was there 110% for me and my family. It was as if God put her here as an angel to help me through these difficult times. When it seemed like I could not catch a break and I was grieving one loss after another, looking back over my life, I realized being a Sixers fan has provided the emotional comfort to get me through the most difficult and challenging times of my life. My Sixers kept my spirits up because it was something that I could always tap into that brought out my inner child. It's something that whenever I'm feeling down, I know talking about the Sixers will always bring me joy. Thanks for tuning in, y'all. Be sure to like, comment, subscribe, and share. And be sure to tune in next weekend for episode, 14, as we continue the story.